afternoon and welcome to the Value of API Management in Government. My name is Brandon and I'll be your operator for today. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Later, we will conduct a question and answer session. Please note this conference is being recorded, and I will now turn it over to David Taylor. You may begin, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I'm Dave Taylor. Thank you all for joining us on this webinar today. In the year as a state CIO in Florida, I've seen a rapid increase in the number of state and local agencies pursuing a digital government strategy. Essential to any of these digital government strategies is the design and implementation of a digital platform. Application Programming Interface Management, the subject we're talking about today, and we're calling that API Management for short, it's a critical part of any digital platform. So let's talk about this digital government platform. Most probably have IT environments like the one pictured on the left. You notice you have a lot of systems with point-to-point connections, and essentially we call it spaghetti code connecting the various back office systems that you have or to any of your portals, customers or partner-facing systems. And that's surprising, as today government agencies are all struggling with complexities and the costs within their IT environment. IT costs continue to grow due to mobility, citizen engagement, big data, and Internet of Things. Those modern forces are making things even more complex. Raising your IT systems by adding new mobile applications and legacy ones can often lead to even more costs and complexity. So strategies such as linking applications with point-to-point connections only serve to make things worse. And the more complex the IT environment that you have, the more security and compliance risks that you're going to face. However, a digital government platform like the one pictured on the right breaks out of that costly cycle. A digital platform allows you to connect your existing applications internally and externally so that you can share data seamlessly. Complex point-to-point connections are replaced by plugging applications into the platform's common information bus, which make it universally available to other applications either through that bus or through APIs. Go ahead, slide here. Aggregated in real time and give a clear view of your agency's performance and outcome indicators. Provide your staff with the right information at the right time so they can make better decisions. New applications can be rapidly assembled on this digital platform using reusable components. Applications are easily modified, they're secure design, and natively connect to your existing systems on that platform. So if you're interested in learning more about why a digital business platform for government is a better strategy than the application-centric approach that I see most people in government using today, just go ahead and Google digital business platform or head to the Software AG website and you can learn more about that. To get a better understanding of what a digital government platform is, let's talk a little bit about a critical part of that platform, APIs and API management, forces that cause that to be so important. So you see the slide here, the world we live in now has become very digital in almost every respect. The digital transformation cannot be overstated. There were 2 billion digitally connected people worldwide, and that number is increasing every year. 50 billion devices will be digitally connected by the year 2020. We've seen about a 40% growth in the data that's generated by business and governments every year, and the growth is a result of the digitization of business and government in itself. Officials and citizens have come to expect a seamless digital interaction when they deal with the business world, increased demanding the same from us in government. So if you put elected officials like I did as part of your job, I'm sure you've heard their demand for private sector solutions for a variety of problems. And API management emerged as one such private sector solution, driven by companies such as Salesforce, eBay, Amazon, and of course, Software AG. For example, over a decade ago, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos sent a memo to his staff at Amazon mandating that all his teams and all systems would share data and functionality using interfaces such as APIs without any exception. He closed the memo with the line, "Anyone who doesn't do this will be fired. Thank you." It took years, but the task was accomplished, and now Amazon sets the standard for efficiency and for a unified customer experience. At least those in the free world can't use this exact strategy to overcome the internal resistance coming digital businesses like Amazon did. No one have the money and the staff resources to make this much change in very little time. For a few years, many government agencies have started leveraging application interfaces and other forms of integration towards becoming digital agencies. So how do APIs enable digital government? Well, APIs allow you to connect applications or computer systems in a standardized and flexible way. This is a major improvement over inflexible point-to-point connections that are commonly used in public agencies. APIs also allow you to expose your data and functionality in web apps, mobile apps, and other connected devices. Moreover, do this while enabling both the security and privacy controls needed by government. Models for citizen engagement. APIs empower mobile applications that empower citizens, be it reporting service needs or crimes, or just informing citizens of events in their area. And transform the Internet into a platform for your government services. Citizens can renew licenses, pay their taxes, and even track service processes that they are a part of. So APIs can dramatically increase an agency's digital interaction with its citizens. If you have more than a few APIs to maintain, managing those APIs becomes a critical issue. Managed APIs can add complexity and cost to your IT environment and can pose a very significant security risk to your organization. So API management is an essential part of moving forward towards digitization. There's three key components to API management, different critical functions. First, the API catalog helps you accelerate the adoption of your APIs. Here you catalog all your APIs for discovery, reuse, lifecycle management. Also create policies for their use that are applied at runtime. Second, the API gateway secures and mediates your APIs through a policy-driven security and authentication. You can support both transport and message layer security, including authentication, authorization, digital encryption, and digital signatures. And finally, the API portal is where you publish your APIs so citizen developers can learn APIs are available and have documentation on how to use them. And also collect analytics to help you better understand your visitors and to measure your portal usage. Which APIs are used and which ones aren't. There's capability in each of these API management services, and our next speaker will go into much greater detail on each of these advanced capabilities. Still wondering why your organization will need these API management tools. There are many reasons we see agencies investigating API management solutions. There's three that tend to drive this need. First, agencies need a better way to integrate their existing systems with those of partner programs and agencies. Point integration seems a simple solution at first, but as the number of those connections increase, so does the cost of maintaining them. And so the political costs of point-to-point connection and reliability drives the need for a more managed integration technology. A major platform addresses both the cost and this reliability issue. Next, we see the need to improve citizen engagement as a major driver. The modern is less tolerant of a government who is unresponsive or difficult to interact with. An API management platform provides you with the tools you need to modernize access to your legacy systems while maintaining the security and privacy of the data in those systems. And finally, open initiatives are an opportunity for government to meet their transparency and accountability goals. While data initiatives involve dumping historical data onto a new website, this data is easy to use in that format. Agencies can use managed APIs to provide direct access to that data in a secure and controlled way so there's no negative impact on your back-end systems. A lot of more use cases for API management. The slide lists just a few others. Imagine being able to do a quick lookup of health inspection results of a restaurant before you take your family to go eat there. How about checking the results of the water quality of your local public pools or beaches before your family visits? Or perhaps trying to reduce fraud. You're trying to reduce fraud in your benefits program. Real-time access to the data in those systems to make sense if there's any fraud going on. Using a managed API platform provides you the tools to make all that possible. By API management strategy, agencies will position themselves to meet the needs of modern citizenry, low cost and complexity of the systems, and be well positioned to evolve into a full-fledged digital government business. On that note, I want to thank you again for attending our webinar, and I'll turn you over to our next presenter.
This is David Oveross. Dave, can you hear me just to make sure that I'm not talking to myself?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Excellent. All right. I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Just to introduce myself, I am At Software AG, I'm responsible for product marketing for our web methods integration platform, including our API management solution. And with that, I was asked to come on share with the attendees here. Basically, what are the kind of core requirements, or what are the things you need to consider if you're going to implement an API strategy? And what it typically looks like is a series of components that fall into the category of API management. And we'll just jump right in. But I want to take a step back and rather than talk about specifically, again, kind of how the problem is solved, I want to talk a little bit about what the problem is and why the different components that you'll see as requirements become necessary for API management. First off is you need to think of it in terms of what kind of assets does your organization have? So does your agency or your your department within your state and local government, do you have certain data that's sort of special that only you can provide, and that's what you're looking for to, I'm on the right slide here, that you're providing either to the citizens within your state or within city, or that you're providing information that's across different agencies within the team. So first off is to take a look at what are those data services that you do provide, and then think about how you're going to make those available to third-party developers. I think this is a key thing to think about when you're thinking about API program. You have to think about it in terms of who your users are, and in many cases, it's a little bit different than the default idea of what your typical user is, because you're not necessarily targeting the end users of your information. So whether you're providing a service that makes it possible to renew a driver's license, for example, if you're a department of vehicles, your user, your total end user might be the citizens of your county or your state, but the people who are going to actually take action with the services you provide might be either a different department or might be third-party developers or people who provide public services through a mobile application or a website for actually delivering that service. So it's important to think of your users not so much as the end users, but as developers. And so you have to have a very developer-centric approach to developing APIs. And that's we think about in terms of what are the types of devices that are going to be on the other end of those APIs. So there might be a web app, there might be a mobile app, there might be a thing, as if things becomes more and more popular, many of the connections and the ways that, say, sensors provide data back to the core server for an IoT analysis would be driven by APIs. Ultimately, though, the key is how do you bring back value to your organization? So most people in commercial organizations are looking for different kinds of a payoff for doing these API programs. In some, we talked about earlier, so Amazon, for example, like Dave Taylor talked about, is providing APIs that make it possible for third-party developers to sell things through the Amazon storefront. In turn, Amazon receives payment for that. So there's a payoff for both Amazon and for the third-party developer who would also, say, get a commission on that. But you need to think about it differently as a state and local government. You need to think about what is the payoff trying to get. Is it just a matter of ensure that you can deliver on a promise to provide public data access to anybody who's entitled to it? Or are you providing services, for example, within a large set of organizations? So you might provide services that another department would be using. Ultimately, though, that has to provide value back to you either as adoption of your services or standardization on those kinds of services. So let's talk a little bit about what it means for most of the kinds of organizations that I'm assuming are on the call here today, because typically organizations in state and local government are going to have a lot of history. They're going to have a lot of assets that have been developed over a long period of time. And if you're looking at, well, how do I create an API program with a lot of legacy applications mainframe applications, there are things you need to consider. First one is how do you define your API? So Software AG, for example, we tend to look at it with certain design patterns in mind. So as Dave said at the beginning, we showed you a picture of what a organization might look like with a lot of different applications, lots of different point-to-point connections, lots of different applications, right? And promise, though, is a higher level offering of services that would be the digital business service that you might provide. And so when we talk about API design patterns, we consider both the lowest level APIs that might be used for very small functionality that are often, for example, used in simple application development or application integration, all the way up to, say, higher level stuff that you provide, say, as a credit check. If you're a commercial bank, for example, you might provide that as a simple process. But ultimately, you might have much level digital business APIs that provide kind of end-to-end capabilities, all packaged up as APIs. But when you think about what your programs are going to be, you need to take into account not just whether or not you can expose APIs, but how you're going to take the existing legacy data and say, orchestrate those and build those into well-defined processes and business APIs, which will then, of course, be exposed to devices such as mobile devices or tablets or for example. So to dig in, now that we talked a little bit about sort of the higher level picture, I want to drill down into what does that mean in terms of actual function requirements and who the players are that are involved. So, for example, if you look at on the left-hand side of the screen, we're looking at providers being, for example, the people that would be on this call, the people who are saying, hey, I need to provide an API that's going to be consumed by either someone within my organization or external to my organization. And businessization, the person for that is really defining what the requirements are for that. And ultimately, then, there's a runtime component to it which requires an operational perspective. Now, we break the requirements down into three major categories, as Dave mentioned earlier. We break them into the requirements for an API portal, API catalog, and an API gateway. They all serve very different functions, but they all work together. So a high-level understanding of what those requirements would be for API management would be, with API catalog, would be things as governance. Does manage the full life cycle of API, from design to development to versioning to retirement, because one of the complexities that happens over time is, and this is actually one of the areas where a lot of people struggle with APIs, is they build an API, they put it out there, they make it available, and then it changes, and then you find you have to maintain multiple versions of it, and then ultimately you want to sunset some versions of it. And how are you able to do that? How are you able to route people to the right implementation of an API? That's a key component of API management. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. Also, we have to talk about how those APIs are deployed, who users are. We already hinted a little bit about that. Your users are typically going to be the people who are designing applications using your APIs as opposed to your ultimate end users. And of course, within the catalog, you also have to manage who's monitoring, who's using your APIs, and monitoring and reporting become a key element of that. The gateway is traditionally thought of as the key layer. So everything from protecting you from malicious attacks to ensuring you've authenticated the user of your API so that you know who they are, being able to virtualize those services, being able to throttle those services so you don't get overloaded by requests. All these things are key components within the gateway layer. And then, of course, the part that everybody sees and people think about when they talk about API management is the portal. And we'll spend a little bit more time on the portal But the key thing there is that this is going to promote your API and enable your users to be able to actually implement your APIs and be able to educate themselves. So that's the kind of three different main categories. So we'll start with the catalog component. So for a lot of people, what we find, particularly with customers of Software AG, what we've seen is that a lot of companies or a lot of organizations spent time with initiatives in the past, service-oriented architecture. And because of that, they have already defined quite a few different services that are available XML schemas, as for example, WSDL, different kind of format. So one thing that you can do that you would expect to find within an API management platform is the ability to easily consume those existing formats that you have. For example, if you defined a lot of services using SOAP-styled web service, or the ability to easily kind of build them from scratch or incorporate them using API descriptors that are geared more for REST services. So typically, the goal for any kind of API management platform would be able to cover the two main API types, which are REST and SOAP. And honestly, most backend systems today are probably more geared towards supporting SOAP-based services, but consumers prefer REST. And that's because you're going to find that they're lighter weight. And think about it in terms of the consumers are typically going to say, for example, a mobile application. You're going to be sending data over a cellular network or your Wi-Fi connection. And in those cases, the payloads themselves are just going to be much simpler and smaller if you're using a REST. Therefore, one of the key things is also to be able to expose your functioning as a REST service, even though on the back end it might be implemented as a different kind of service, whether it's a Java service or a SOAP service. So creating and exposing your APIs is a key component of the API catalog. Once you define those APIs, you want to be able to publish them out to the portal, because the portal, like I said before, is where your customers will discover you, where they'll learn about which services you're providing as APIs, what kind of data you're providing as APIs. And there's different ways to do that. At Software, what we have is the ability to, for example, we have a couple of different approaches for populating those APIs. So if you're an existing Software AG customer and you've developed a lot of or APIs using the Web Methods integration platform, it's very simple to easily populate those descriptions directly into the portal, either manually doing it within our designer tool, but also to use APIs, because the API portal itself is built with a number of APIs that allow you to do things such as import or update. So kind of a key component to be able to make those available. If your APIs are in the portal, the purpose of the portal is to actually promote, right? So think about who your users are again. They're going to be developers, either, like I said, within your own organization, or more typically what we see in API management is they're users outside of your organization, and they really don't know what you provide, and they don't know how to use your services. So a portal is really just a website that is almost like a catalog, as it were, of which APIs you have available. The way we lay out our blog is we gallery of APIs. So we have everything. These are the pictures you see here. I know they're kind of small, but you can get an idea. So we have things like search API, build API. These are just examples. This is a gallery of APIs that we provide that out of, as a part of our sample environment, where somebody might come in and say, oh, I want to learn how to use this search API, or I want to learn how to use this simple API. One of the examples we use is from the Swagger website. Swagger is one of the API descriptor languages that's used for REST APIs, but they provide a pet store API as a sample, and we like to show that just to give you an idea of how that works. So you can kind of learn about it. It'll tell you what the resources are, resources being like method calls such as a get or a put, and then you can not only learn about what the API provides, but you can actually request access. So as I said before, you need to provide authentication so that you control who has access to your APIs. And so one of the key components that a portal will provide is the ability for users who are interested in using your API to request access. So they come in and say, I'd like to get either an API token or I'd like to have access via OAuth or something like that. So this kind of handshake is really important in terms of controlling that security layer that is then enforced at the gateway level. You can also get full samples depending on how sophisticated the information is you put into your portal, but you could put in code samples, for example, and even the ability to test out the API right from within the portal to see what kind of results it's going to return back. So once you've registered, you received your access token, for example, go in and you can type directly within a portal screen, say, well, I put in these parameters, what's the output going to be? It's really important just so that people are able to fully appreciate what this does, what that shape looks like, and what results they can expect. And I think it's always important when we talk about this kind of exploration and kind of self-learning on the websites, is that one of the things that, at least in the commercial sector, makes some AI vendors more successful than others is the ease of use in terms of the definition of their APIs. So one of the things that we've seen people struggle with is they think, well, I have all these APIs I've defined, all of those system-level APIs like we talked about a moment ago. In many ways, those kinds of APIs are not easily consumable by people who aren't intimately familiar with your systems. And so that's why it's really important to provide a layer up, an abstraction layer on top of those really level services that provide some sort of cohesive process of some sort, or even like a higher level business service. So one of the terms we use for that is, instead of user usability, it's more it's like designer usability, right? So the designer experience, or developer experience, because ultimately, remember, your users are developers. One of the other important things about any kind of portal, because remember, it's your face, the face of your company or your organization's AI offering, and so you want that to look like part of your website. So it's really important to be able to look and feel into what the rest of your organization is presenting as an outward face to your organization. So you want to, your portal provides the ability to customize both by adding in images that are appropriate for your site, but also fonts, colors, anything that you can manage using a CSS type sheet. Very important. And anybody who's looking for a portal should make sure that that's a key requirement, the look and feel, to make sure that they're doing something that looks like it's part of their broader organization. Another thing that to the developer experience is bringing some social aspects to understanding and using APIs, and even providing feedback on APIs back to the people who are defining them and making them available. So providing communities or social streams is a great way of doing that. You can, if you're interested in a particular API, that's when you're following, that's when you're implementing, you're considering implementing. You could, for example, follow follow the API in its social stream, and then all of the different conversations that happen about it, whether people ask questions or people offer feature requests, anything like that, you would be able to see as part of being a member of that community. So, because a way of thinking about providing APIs is to think of them almost as products in and of themselves. We think of typically as being smaller than products, just a service, but within knowledge organization, if you're providing something like that, it in fact its own product or its own mini product, and you make sure that you're finding the requirements of the API that you're providing, sure that it's providing what you promised in description, and sure that if people have usability ideas or enhancement requests, they have a good way to capture those. And the communities is a good way to do that. Once you've defined your APIs, you've gone through your catalog of internal systems and applications, and you've decided which components you wanted to provide, you can publish to the API, the API portal. But the other thing you need to do is make them available to the gateway. And a lot of times we talk about this as like our virtualization layer. This is really where the time component is happening. Typically, we're providing the throttling, the security layer, and all of those pieces. So one part of that is just ensuring that you've defined your security rules correctly. We already talked about the need to provide, say, authentication, and one of the ways to do that is we directly within our API catalog, you can define API per API level what the policy is going to be, what kind of security you're going to use, how you're going to make those tokens or OAuth security policy enforced. So, and you can also define for each API, for example, how granular the user's ability to use that is going to be. So you might provide an API that only allows access to, say, a GET method. And you can provide that kind of granular control, or you can provide control to call all the different methods that are available on the API. So, and then also there's routing rules. One of the things we see is for customers who have a lot of, say, back-end systems, wanted to expose them as REST services, certain routing that needs to be handled in between there. So how do you those REST methods and map them to or route them to the back-end system without calling a legacy application or an mainframe application? A lot of that's handled right within when you define your policies within security layer, and that's one of the key components of the API catalog. Of the gateway component, monitoring and management. And we didn't talk about it so much before on the portal side. I'll touch upon it a little bit here, but the operations person really needs to understand what kind of traffic is coming through the gateway. So you want to be able to actually at two different levels. Think of it in terms of, again, who your users are. Some of your users are the people who are defining the APIs, and some of them are more like runtime users. So you can actually monitor both at the run level and the design time level. To give you an example, if you are defining, let's say you're the product manager for certain APIs, and you're trying to as a product, and you really want to make sure that you understand how it's being used and using it. What you can do is you can actually track which pages within your portal are being accessed, which pages or which APIs are being requested for access to tokens, which pages are even being viewed. You can tell just from the design time usage whether or not you're providing the right services. You might find that you've provided 4 different APIs for external users, but at the end of the day, only 2 of them are being used. Well, then where you took the effort, you might be able to better understand what the requirements are and or put your limited resources into developing the APIs that are providing the most value to your community. And you can even tell kind of geographically where that is. Who's using services from different parts that you could track kind of a map type application. The more interesting element would be actual runtime usage. So we've made it available, you have people signed up, they've built applications using it, but now be able to track who's actually using it and how much traffic are they running through your system. And one of the reasons this is really important for some organizations, it's direct monetization, but it might also be considered to be like a chargeback mechanism. So what you're providing a shared service that might be used across different agencies. If that's the case, and you want to therefore charge back to those different agencies based on their usage of your API you've provided, you need to be able to track at API level and at a user level using your services. So monitoring runtime usage is kind of a key component of that, which you then in turn build either an invoicing system or a billing system or some kind of a chargeback cross payment type application to track that. So back, we've covered a lot of the capabilities that are kind of key drivers or the key requirements for an API management platform. There's the portal component. Remember, the portal component is really for promotion. How do you get those APIs out there so that people can discover them and use them? They provide that documentation. They let you register. They provide communities for you to be able to have those people who are using it and tracking it provide feedback, ask questions, and even test directly within the portal. The component is super important, particularly for sensitive data. You need to be able to protect your APIs from unregistered users, and be able to protect them from malicious attacks, and really get an understanding of how the APIs are being used and by whom. And finally, the catalog is important because this is what's going to define all of those policies that kind of shape who's your APIs, right? It's the runtime policies, but also design policies. I mean, one of the things I think that Dave touched on when he was speaking was that there are dependencies. You know, if you build a point-to-point system that represents what we used to call a spaghetti-type diagram, which is, you know, honestly just as possible or even more possible today in a world when APIs are becoming more and more commonly used for almost typical application integration scenarios. The risk that you're going to build for the back into your system, it's going to become that if one of those applications changes. Remember, one of the drivers for integration technologies going back so many years is when you introduce change into a system that's built on point-to-point connections, you enter risk because one of those points changes. There's a ripple effect. So understanding design time dependencies for your APIs is very important, and you want your API management solution to give kind of insight so that you know, hey, if I change this API or I provide a new version, I've been break backward compatibility with the old version, who's going to be impacted? And in this world, it's more important when the people that can be impacted are within your organization, but they're third-party users. So they'll maintain those handshakes, those service level agreements, and understanding what those dependencies are becomes really important. So for those who are familiar with Software AG, you'll spend a lot of time working with different industry analysts, analysts from Forrester, Randy Hefner, did an analysis of the API management market. And one of the comments he made about Software AG is that we're particularly strong in the area for lifecycle management and for integration. So unlike some of the API vendors out there that are really just portal front end for existing services that you have, Software AG is particularly well positioned to help people with enterprise API initiatives, existing companies that have a lot of legacy applications that might need to provide integration services on the back end. So that's where, and if you're looking for an API management solution, Software AG might be a really good fit for you. And finally, why Software AG? So hopefully you've seen as we've gone through the presentation, one of the things that Software AG always emphasizes for any kind of products that we put out is tight integration between our different components. Now, not everything is all required. We have a philosophy of tight integrated but loose coupled, meaning most of the pieces stand on their own just as well as they work together. But a proven platform for building, running, and exposing APIs. So that's the flag that we put in the ground. So that's one of our core areas of competence, is making sure that if we product, it's integrated with the existing products and provide just bolted on solutions. The thing is that we offer comprehensive API lifecycle and management, everything from the runtime elements to the log to the gateway to the portal, all the pieces that we talked about today that are just critical for having success in the API management program. And finally, back to the very beginning, we talked about the digital business platform. Software AG is committed to enable its customers to realize digital initiatives, digital transformation. And API management is really a key cornerstone in making that possible. I would go out so far as to say that I try to do a digital initiative with having an API strategy in place has to be for failure, because ultimately you're providing services in a digital way, and that's the very definition of what API management is about. So that I've covered all of the pieces I wanted to make sure I covered. I think we'll open it up for Q&A. Did you have any feedback on that before we open it up to Q&A?
No, I don't. I think right now it's best to see if the audience had any questions for us, and they can type that in right in their screen. There's a box for that.
So the hit box in the WebEx window that you can use.
And we have questions on the phone as well.
Oh, great. Yeah, okay. So if anybody does have a question on the phone,
I give the instructions. If you have a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. If you wish to be removed from the queue, please press the pound sign or the hash key. There may be a delay before the first question is announced. If you're on a speakerphone, please pick up your handset first before dialing the numbers. Once again, if you have a question on the phone, please press star 1.
Okay. Well, I need to see if there's any questions on the phone. One question I did get was whether or not Software AG's management solution is a cloud-based offering or an on-premises offering. And let me tell you a little bit about what our take is and kind of how what is shaping up. So our vendors that offer both on-premises and cloud offerings, some kind of focus on one area, some on another. Software AG has an on-premises offering for everything that we provide within the what we showed you today, and then we also have an API portal called Web Methods API Cloud that's available as a service. So, for example, if you've already have on-premises API available and all you're looking for is a portal but you don't necessarily want to host that within your environment. You want Software AG to host it, and we have that available today. It's called Web Methods API Cloud, and you learn more about it by going to webmethodscloud.com. There's all of our different cloud solutions there. In October this year, we will also be bringing you cloud offering for our Web Methods API Gateway. So that'll do there. Are there any other questions? Anybody have a question on the phone?
No questions on the phone at this time.
Gee, what's in the queue? I do not see any other questions in the queue at this time. So unless there's questions that anybody wants to bring up on the phone, or Dave, if you have any other comments, that's it.
Yeah, I would thank everybody for attending today. And again, feel free to reach out to us at Software AG if you have any questions that you come up with later.
Thank you, gentlemen. This concludes today's conference. Thank you for joining. You may now disconnect.